right? I'm going to put the timer on.
Okay.
So it's set for 30 minutes.
Okay.
I'm so excited. This just feels like, it feels like the start of something new.
It's like
I'm
playtime.
excited.
I've just been watching this Sly documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you've seen it. It's really interesting, and there's so many messages in there about life's short. Just get on and do it and have fun and try things and push forward. And so it was really interesting. Okay.
Right.
Welcome to Conversations from the Gap, a podcast hosted by two friends, Melinda and Chloe, who first connected through Instagram and are now having candid conversations about the journey of building a sustainable, creative business and filling the gaps. We'll explore the
Keep going.
We'll explore the trials and joys of navigating the photography industry, share insights on the mindset needed for success, uncover the power of collaborations, and dive into how to tap into your creative flow. But we won't stop there. We'll also delve into the deeper why behind your photography business, the passion and trials that fuel your journey. Join us as we shed light on topics not often openly discussed for women in the creative business. Join us in our conversations from the gap.
How exciting. I'm so excited for this. Yeah.
Exciting. Yeah. So why the gap, Melinda?
For us, there is a gap. We are in our 40s.
Yep.
We are experiencing,
shifts.
So shifts in our motherhood, our creativity, what our gaze is drawn to, our businesses, and it can be a lonely journey because you literally are like, okay, well, like this is where I am, and I'm a bit wobbly in that because I don't know about you, but kind of when I hit 40, I felt like everything changed. I literally was like, a lot of my cares kind of slipped off my back, and a lot of caring about what people thought really did dissolve. It was almost, well, I can tell you the date. It was the 12th of November 2019 that I was sitting next to my child's hospital bed after he'd had a massive accident, and it was like this overwhelming energy of I have to do what I love.
Yeah.
I have to explore love. It's going to be hard. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be every color of the spectrum, every shade. And it was scary but exciting. And it was a feeling I've never felt before. And so now it's feeling that gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
so interesting you say that, because I've never thought about it being at the point of turning 40 before until you've just said it. And when I turned 40, I was in the Seychelles and I was just coming clear of cancer. And I took a photograph, which I've shared a couple of times on my Instagram, of a blue flower coming out of the darkness. And that was a monumental point. And I'd never thought about the fact that it was then. You've just shed light on something. Oh, we can be so close to our lives, can't we? And we just can't see. We just can't see it.
We can't.
And I think that is what is going to be so exciting about these conversations, is that you and I are deep thinkers, we view life beyond the surface. And even though we do that on a regular basis, there are so many moments when we're still in that gap. And I love the idea of Exactly like you said, that gap can feel like a vacuum. It can feel like this strange, uncomfortable place. But as we've talked so many times, I actually believe it's a really expansive, exciting place. And I
Yeah.
think that is exactly where we're at. And that's how we came around the name. And the more we talked about it, the more there are so many gaps. You know, I feel like I sit in the gap between artist and storyteller, photographer, and you sit in the gap between writer and photographer. And, you know, as you say, our age, the fact that we're women sometimes can feel like, you know, we are, as women in general, beginning to be taken more seriously in the business world, and yet we're not. You know, and I think that there are so many interesting conversations that I know that there are so many interesting conversations that we're going to be having. And so whereabouts are you in your journey right now?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, so sitting next to Jack's bed,
Yeah.
I've always taken photos. Like, I've got photos. Actually, I found a photo. My mum brought over photos from when we were kids, and there was a photo that I took of mum when my sister was 6 weeks old, and mum was putting my sister into one of those like little bouncy crocheted, like bouncy rocker things. And mum said, "Oh, you took that photo." So I would have been 2. That was my first photo, and it
That's
was
epic.
actually very beautiful. It was my mum's hands and the side of mum's face putting my sister into this little rocker. So I've always taken photos. And then sitting next to Jack's bed, I've just, like it was this. I'd had the worst phone call that I could have ever had. Where you don't know if your child is okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, everything solidified of like mortality.
Yeah.
Like literally, I've already had the worst phone call. So, what? It's only up from here.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I was like, it's important for me to write and take photographs. That's always been like my therapy. I sort of flow between the two. I find writing very expansive. I find it overwhelming sometimes because there's just so much that I can pour out. Whereas photography brings me back to the moment, brings me back to that one frame, and so I flow between the two. And again, conversations for me, they collapse time. Conversations like we have, like, those ones where like we've spoken before, where it'll be like you have one cup of tea and then you have another one and then you could have lunch and you could have wine and then you have cheese butter. Like you could have a conversation that just goes the whole day. They are so important to me. So at that point, I knew that I had to create something around those 3 things. And that's what I did. I'd been a, receptionist, admin, personal assistant for 20 something years. I offered that. And then that sort of blew up. I was booked out straight away. What was really interesting, which was so fascinating to me, the women that signed up thinking they needed admin help, they didn't need admin help. They wanted someone to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were in the literal gap.
Yeah.
Of this is where I am. This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting, and it's fascinated me, the conversations that I've had with women in that sort of space, and now we're doing this. When we're collaborating and when we have a space where we can open up and be honest and vulnerable, and we can have a laugh, we can have a cry, so many things change.
Yeah.
And verbally processing things, it sort of accelerates your dreams.
Yeah.
It becomes clearer. Like you said before, you had like a little bit of a breakthrough of like, oh my God, I didn't realize. Like that's what can happen. And so that's literally what happened in my business of like, I thought I was offering admin services. It turned into conversations, which then bloomed beautifully into mentoring sessions.
Yeah.
And it really did bloom. Like you know, like the women that I had that just kept signing up and signing up and signing up because they were almost addicted to themselves and what they were learning about themselves in the conversations we were having.
Absolutely.
And so when we started talking about the podcast, that was really important to me. Having those types of conversations, but with a broad audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's where I am. Like,
Yeah.
I can't wait for
No.
our conversations, because you and I, that's why we've literally set a time limit on our podcast. So our podcast is gonna be 30 minutes, and I have got a timer because we will sit here for hours and talk.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what we talked about, like the depths we can go in these
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you and I exist within the gap, and for the most part, it has always been that expansive space. And sometimes you can actually sit, being a creative, being particularly a photographer, you sit in this gap of when you're working with clients, particularly if you're a people photographer, so to speak, you know, could be shooting families or weddings or clients, advertising campaigns, whatever, is you're with people and you're immersed and you're engaging all the things that you love, all the strengths that you have. And then you go back to the computer and you spend hours editing, and there isn't that balance. If you're self-employed, there isn't that balance of, oh, I'm going to call a morning meeting at 9 o'clock and we're all going to exchange energy and we're all going to exchange what we're going to do for the day. And we're going to ask questions and we're going to be accountable to each other. And then we're going to go to our desks and we're going to get on. You know, there's so much self-motivation that has to happen in that gap and in that space. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm editing and when I'm doing, I actually have to have a movie, like, for example, the Sly documentary in the background, because it's almost, I need this reassurance that I'm still here and still my brain is still going. And I think the conversations, because I remember starting with you as well, and I was like, I really need admin help. And then we started having conversations, and it really was this verbal processing space that we, you know, for however long, forever, as women particularly, we've been gaslit. We've been, you know, and we don't have that sometimes ability to sit there in a business meeting and going, what do you think about this? Because we do naturally sit in a doubting space. And I think it's also, you know, partly being mothers. You know, we sit there in that space going, okay, I need to do this for my child. Is that right for my child? Or should I be doing this for my child? Or should I be cooking this for dinner? Or should I be cooking that for dinner? And it's the same in our business space. You know, we sit there and we say, you know, I need to send out an email, but I also need to finish this edit and I need to do this. And my things are shifting in my business and I need to think about this new creative way to sell X, Y, and Z. Or there's some photographer that's come into my space and, you know, I need to work around that. And there are so many questions that we sit consuming within our brain, and we need to be able to have those conversations. So I think that's what's so exciting about what you've built. I know that it's really helped a number of photographers, women photographers and creatives, and it's really exciting seeing what they're now doing. For me, I'm sitting in a place where for 13 years I've, you know, labeled myself a professional photographer, and yet I've had so many changes in terms of location, in terms of marriage situation, in terms of children, in terms of business type, all within the photography realm. But I've gone up and down where I thought, actually, I know about this stuff. I can teach about this stuff. And then all of a sudden I dip and changes happen again. And I go, actually, I know nothing. And I'm in a little bit of that space at the moment. That gap is that I feel like I've had lots of experiences and lots of changes, but because so many things are shifting for me, like almost on a daily basis, I actually feel strangely like the pupil again, like the, you know, in the class, like I need to learn again. And what I love about our conversations is it definitely reminds me when we start talking about things that actually there is stuff that I do know. And although it feels like I'm sitting in a gap, which I am, I think it is definitely more of an expansive gap than a vacuum. And that's what these yours and my conversations do for me. And I'm really excited, and I'm hoping that they are helpful for other people as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I think too, like you just said, like you've got 13 years of incredible experience. You've worked all over the world. You've worked with, incredible people. And you have you have the muscle memory of, and the trust in yourself of your photography, of your creativity. And from that space, that foundation, do you think that, like you just said, you feel like the pupil again? But do you feel so with that foundation, now that you feel like the pupil, what do you feel like you're going to learn deeper to what you already know?
Got no idea. And isn't that the
Isn't that
exciting
exciting?
part?
Yeah.
I've got no idea. I think I still need to. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, I feel like I'm at this point where I can pick up my camera and feel confident that I can deliver beautiful, instinctive, compelling images almost anywhere I go, whether it's in a supermarket, whether it's at a family session, whether it's for a corporate client. And yet I think I don't have that inner belief in myself, in the way I speak, the way I teach, and all that sort of stuff, which seems in some ways slightly strange, but also is just a big part of what's within me. And what I'm excited about is over the next few years of just really digging into that understanding of, I yearn to help people, and I love when I have helped people, and I wrote my book to help people. And yet I still have these lots of questions in my mind about how I can make it work. And because I've also recently become a solo mum, and my children are still small, and my income is 100% paramount to our existence, that has been a massive shift for me, because photography has always been an additional income. It's been secondary. It's been for the extras in life. It's been for, paying for a new camera. It's been for, all of those things. Whereas now it puts food on the table, and it pays rent, and it does all of those things. And so again, it's this shift of understanding that actually that's a massively different place to be in, particularly as a woman and in a creative field, because not only are you working through it within yourself, but you're also working through it within the perception of the outside world, the assumptions that are made, the just the general sense of, you're a woman, you've got a camera, you're a mum, you're an ex, there's like assumption, and it's fighting those, but also managing them from a logistical standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a continuing to be creative standpoint, sort of all of those, trying to remain free with my creativity, and yet also trying to be disciplined. It's a really interesting gap that
It
I
is.
feel that I'm in.
But I think too, this is what's going to be so potent about these conversations.
Yeah.
Because like everything you just talked about, it's that gap of hobby to business.
Yeah.
Having the money that is, like you said, to buy a new camera, but now having the responsibility of putting food on the table for your kids.
Yeah.
It's showing up for yourself, in your creativity and in your art, but then also having to bridge that gap of client work.
Yeah.
And such big topics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such big topics. The gap between you and me is like, oh, that's what's going to make it interesting, because I still have a job and I am building my business, and I have older kids. So I have the time.
Yeah.
And I have a different time, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think these gaps between you and me will make the conversations so interesting.
Yeah.
Because we're together, but we're not.
Yeah.
Like, we're experiencing so many different things in building a creative business that is sustainable for women of our age and where we're at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're in Australia and I'm in New Zealand, so you've got another gap there.
The ditch. We got the ditch.
The ditch. Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I think the fascinating thing is, as we started talking about and we started listing off the topics that we want to discuss in this space, the list just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And I think the thing that I feel I'm also in the gap, like you just asked, where do I want to grow and where do I feel like how much deeper is also, it's not necessarily deeper, but it's an understanding of, for example, brand and outward portrayal of who I am as a photographer, an artist, a leader. As I've shared before, and a number of people know, I created 4 people for 8 or 9 years. So I shot 4 clients for 8 or 9 years. I was shooting for myself, not in an intense way. Well, towards the sort of probably year 6, I became sort of interested in personal projects. But so for 8 or 9 years, I was shooting clients, and a lot of my social media were sharing clients' work and in the hope to engage clients and get more business. And then I moved to New Zealand and I took a break, and I wrote my book and then created the creative journal. I worked a lot with Cindy Kavanagh, and then we built the atelier and we did all of that. So then my social media and my output became supporting photographers, supporting artists, encouraging people to be brave, encouraging people to just get out there and shoot, to reflect on their work, to do all of these things that form the foundation of who we are as visual imagery makers. And then, of course, everything switched again about a year and a half ago, and now I'm back to shooting clients. And again, that's as I just mentioned, it's absolutely crucial for me, because that's what's my income and supporting my family. And yet I have this burning inside me to help and support. And I occasionally I continue to share that side of things on my social media, particularly Instagram. And yet it can be on conflict to working with clients, because, for example, I had a slightly uncomfortable client situation recently, and I shared a hint of what it was about on social media to encourage other artists to not take it personally, and to consider that there are more factors than just them when things happen. But then, of course, I didn't share who it was. I didn't share anything about the job, nothing. And yet there was this undercurrent of clients going, actually, that was a little bit awkward, and I take that on board. But I sit in this gap now. I sit in this gap of this place from loving shooting clients. I love shooting clients, but there are ups and downs with it. And yet I'm also sitting in this place of educator for photographers, for artists to support. And yeah, so it's a really interesting crossover.
That's the question I want to ask you is, and I know we're running out of time, we've only got 6 minutes left.
The gap of life.
The-
Talking in the
no,
gap of life.
when you were saying about, I love how you said it got awkward. And I love that you have the ability to honor your clients while also your incredible knowledge of educating and being an example for other women photographers in business. Yeah, it's going to get awkward, but you didn't shy away from it. And, you set that example for other photographers to understand that, oh, okay, oh, well, I'm not the only one that's had an awkward experience with a client.
Yeah.
Even Chloe Lodge has had an awkward experience with a client. Because these are the things that we're going to talk about is the awkward.
Yeah.
Is the things that sometimes there might be shame around it or embarrassment, or like sometimes we sort of keep these things to ourselves and we don't talk about it. And then you compare, and then you fall down that rabbit hole of scrolling on Instagram to see what everyone else is up to. And I love that you mentioned that it got awkward.
Yeah. No, I totally, and actually it's always really interesting because I share openly. I have my heart is on my sleeve. I share my experiences both personally and professionally a number of times. And it's often when I share something on Instagram, particularly on stories, that as soon as I've posted it, that I want to delete it, are the ones that get the most response. And I'm not talking about response in terms of likes and, I'm talking about internally people going, thank you for sharing it, or I've had the same experience, or thank you, I'm not alone. Like, just that comfort level and that understanding and that support that I think is often lacking. And again, it reverts back to that space of when you're employed and when you're not not a solo entrepreneur or a creative sitting at home working, you have that space. You have a boss, you have a colleague, you can go get a coffee. I've got this awkward situation. We don't have that. And even sometimes when you hire a mentor or you do have people that you talk to, they're busy. They may be mums, they're business, owners as well. And it's having that courage. It feels like we constantly need to find that courage to do anything in our business, really. And if we can talk about those awkward things and hopefully break down some barriers, and everything is from our experience and our experience and things that we've been through, right? This is not necessarily saying that we're experts in this field. It's conversations about the journey of creativity and being a woman, and particularly those of us who are in our 40s and things are shifting. I think it's going to be I'm really excited, and we hope that it's going to be great for our listeners as well.
No, I'm excited for our conversations, but I'm actually more excited to see what other conversations spring off our conversation.
Yeah.
And, what it creates, or what it, other conversations that can be had, or, maybe if it just, I'm excited for the opportunity, and as you said all along, the expansiveness and just bringing up new ideas and thoughts and themes and sort of disrupting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that the alarm?
In a beautiful way, in a nice, kind,
in a beautiful way. Absolutely. And one of our topics is about that there is no curiosity in comfort, and I think that is exactly what we're talking about here. You and I are both curious, and we both sit pretty uncomfortable most of the time about a lot of things, and so we are excited to be bringing that to everybody else and be open and have open conversations about the journey. So that's awesome.
It's exciting, but I think it's also, I'm looking forward to the awkward. I kind of am. Like I feel awkward now even talking about it, but
That's awesome. That's awesome.
What else can I feel uncomfortable about?
Maybe it should have been awkward conversations from the gap. That's awesome.
Have those awkward conversations in person, and then
Yeah.
you kind of walk away and you've got a million other questions.
Yeah.
That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we've decided that we are keeping it short. We're keeping it to 30 minutes thereabouts because
25 seconds.
we all know how little time we all have. 30 minutes is usually a car ride or doing the washing up or something like that, dare I say it? And I think that we have a tendency, as Melinda said earlier, to go off on one. So we are talking in the gap, from the gap, about the gap, and there we go. 30 minutes. So
30 minutes.
Fantastic. See you next time.
See you next week.